Hello, I'm Dr Manjir and welcome to Hidden Science. This week we'll be looking at the science and practice of lucid dreaming and what it tells us about the nature of reality. Today I'll be talking with Charlie Morley, who's a Hay House author and lucid dreaming teacher, Todd Icke, who teaches altered states of consciousness, and David Ferrell, who recently organised the Gateways of the Mind conference here in London. But first, here's a short introduction to the subject from our Hidden Science reporter, Grace Willis.
We all dream at night when we sleep. Most people don't remember what they dream about and may comment that they never dream at all. This is not true. We all dream every night when we are asleep, but most of the time we are just not conscious of the fact. So what is lucid dreaming?
Lucid dreaming is when you realise you are dreaming whilst in a dream. The sudden realisation that you are not in reality. Instead, you are in fact occupying a world inside your own mind.
All the places you find yourself in, all the things that surround you and the people you interact with are all created by you in your mind. You become God of a reality of your making. Sometimes we experience this type of dreaming spontaneously. It is often possible to learn how to increase lucid dreaming and thereby increase your capacity to affect the course of the dream events as they unfold. There are also some strange things about lucid dreaming, and they can also act as an indicator to test whether you are dreaming or not. For some reason, you cannot control the light contrast within a dream. So if you are not sure if you are dreaming or not, try and turn a light on or off. If it doesn't work, you might be dreaming. Also, you cannot read text or tell the time, so check your watch or a book, and if no sense can be made, then you could be fast asleep. Lucid dreaming is as real as, well, this. But it does open a philosophical question. If perceptually lucid dreaming is as real as this world, then how do we know if we are really dreaming or not? Back to Manjir at the studio.
Fascinating information there from Grace. Right, my first guest today is Charlie Morley, and he's a Hay House author and teacher of mindfulness of dreams and sleep. He takes a holistic approach to lucid dreaming within the context of Tibetan Buddhism. His first book with Hay House is called Dreams of Awakening. Hello, Charlie, and welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Great to meet you. And so I guess the first question is, what exactly is lucid dreaming?
Lucid dreaming is the art of learning to become conscious within your dreams. So it's not just having really, really vivid dreams. It's specifically having a dream where you are in the dream, sound asleep, but part of the mind wakes up and says, aha, I'm in a dream. That's a lucid dream.
So it's you're not awake, you're not, it's a kind of in-between stage.
No, it's not an in-between stage.
No.
You're not half awake, half asleep. You are sound asleep.
Right.
You're muscle paralysis, you're snoring, you're dribbling, whatever you are out for the count. But part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, has switched back on again and is experiencing partially the projection of the rest of the brain.
Ah, right, so people have studied this in EEGs and things
Yeah,
like that.
we've got fMRI scans, we've got
Right.
EEG scans, we know it exists.
Yeah, amazing. So how did you get into this? Because you were quite young really when you started to explore this, just 16. I mean, most people are like chatting up girls and this and that, and you're getting into lucid dreaming.
Well, those two things actually go hand in hand. My main prerogative for getting into kind of lucid dreaming at that point was just like loads of dream sex. Because the lucid dream state is so realistic.
Right.
You know, once you're in there, you can touch, you can feel, you can experience as real as this. You know, that's why it's so interesting in looking at exploration of altered dimensions of reality, because it's so real. And for me at 16, the kind of realistic stuff I wanted to experience was sex and skateboarding. So I did a lot of sex in the lucid dreams and was an amazing skateboarder in my lucid dreams.
So would you actually meet like a girl that you fancied or something? Would you actually sort of consciously sort of meet them in a lucid dream?
Yeah, it would be like movie stars mainly when I was that age. You know, you'd go into the lucid dream and you'd go like, you know, this really beautiful movie star is going to be behind this door. Boom. And then you open the door and you could manifest this projection of the movie star. Now, of course, it's not really them, it's just your mental projection of them.
Right.
But in the lucid dream state, your mental projection can seem as real as the waking state.
Right.
So your interaction with them is similarly as real.
So, apart from the movie stars, the girls that you did know, for example, did they ever sort of say, you know, your face seems familiar or something like that? Do you think they responded at all?
No, I mean, when you're in the lucid dream state, you're dealing with your own projections 99% of the time. However, there is a crucial 1%, which would make up elements of collective unconscious, universal mind, universally existing archetypes, dead relatives, this kind of stuff, that can be that crucial 1%. But I'm almost certain when I was a 16-year-old just messing about, it was just mind.
So you said that you can actually work out some sort of psychological issues through lucid dreaming, sort of the shadow and the dark aspects. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so once you're done kind of doing the sex stuff and flying about and just having fun, what you realize is that the lucid dream state is a laboratory for enlightened action. It gives you direct access to the deepest elements of your own psychology. And in a nutshell, from a psychological point of view, anything you can treat through hypnotherapy, you can treat through lucid dreaming. Because whereas the hypnotherapist will bring you into the shallows of the subconscious mind, implant a suggestion of healing intent, and allow the subconscious to do its thing, in a lucid dream, you are in the depths of the unconscious. You can't get more unconscious than asleep. So if you plant a suggestion of healing intent or psychological inquiry in the depths of the unconscious in the lucid dream state, it works very, very powerfully. Now, no way am I saying that makes it better than hypnotherapy.
Right.
You know, I love hypnotherapy and hypnosis. It's just horses for courses.
So do you think you're actually exploring like a dimension of consciousness of your own self, as it were?
Absolutely. In the lucid dream state, you see fundamentally how absolutely profound the experience of illusion can be inside your own head. You see that your mind can create an illusion of reality that seems realer than this.
Right.
So when you wake up, it calls into question your experience of this reality. Because you think, well, if in my lucid dream last night, I was talking to you on this sofa and I touched this sofa and it felt as real as this, then right now when I touch it and it feels as real life, it calls into question, what's the difference?
Yeah.
And that becomes a very interesting line of psychological inquiry.
So how have you resolved that? I mean, what do you think is more real? Do you think what we call physical reality, or do you think the lucid dream world is more real?
You know, then we call into question what is real, what is reality?
Yeah.
I mean, is real our experiential interaction with the world around us? In that case, the lucid dream state is just as real as the waking state. In fact, it is an internal reality, it just shifts on different laws. And within Tibetan Buddhism, which is of course the context in which I teach this stuff, our exploration of the lucid dream state and training to work with and influence the laws of physics within the seeming laws of physics within the dream state is used as a preparation for this state, for the ultimate experience of lucid living, to wake up and see the dreamlike nature of this, to see, aha, perhaps this is just as created by my mind as the lucid dream state. And because of that, perhaps when I meet a new person in this dream, I should treat them with exactly the same kindness and compassion that I treat the characters in my dream. Because of course the characters in my dream, I know they're me. So I'd never be mean or cruel or violent to anything in my dream, in the lucid dream. Because it'd be like shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
So if we could wake up in this dream state and explore this waking reality, compassion would arise spontaneously.
So it's actually teaching you that all is one, and that's the ultimate reality.
Yeah.
So whatever happens to something in your lucid dream, you're actually dealing with an aspect of yourself.
Yeah.
Right, and so that's fascinating. Can you tell us about some of the sort of hairier experiences that you might have had actually in terms of the dreams?
In what way do you mean hairy?
Because you've described how you've actually met a sort of shadow aspect of yourself, and that could be quite frightening.
Yeah, so working with shadow and nightmares in the lucid dream state is really where my path began in earnest. Because when I was about 17, I had a near-death experience based on a drug overdose, without going into too many details.
Right.
And I had 4 months of post-traumatic stress nightmares after this. I go into this in some detail in the book, actually. And the nightmares happen on a weekly basis. And I'd keep on getting confronted by this big shadow aspect of the trauma of the near-death experience.
Right.
And at the same time, I was reading about lucid dreaming, I'd trained myself to learn how to do it, but I was still in the sex and skateboarding realm. I hadn't thought that, perhaps if I could become lucid in this post-traumatic stress recurring nightmare, I could turn to face the source of my fear and integrate it into the wholeness of myself. And one night, I eventually did do that. I managed to become lucid in the nightmare, and I faced the source of my fear.
And that's something that just came to you in an insight to do?
No, not at all.
No.
It was thinking, God, if I don't sort out my head, the men in white coats are going to take me away. How can I do this?
Right.
So I started looking through and remembering, in that lucid dreaming book, I'd read that you could work with nightmares.
Yeah.
So I went in there intentionally, became lucid in the nightmare, turned to face the source of fear, and it dissolved.
Right.
And the nightmares went overnight. 4 months of post-traumatic stress nightmares healed in one lucid dream.
Wow.
And it was then that I realized, okay, this goes far beyond, egoic fantasy in the dream state. This stuff has the potential to really wake us up and to do deep healing interventions while we sleep.
So instead of years and years of psychotherapy, if you're actually going into these sort of lucid dream dimensions, you can face that shadow personified, as it were, and actually integrate it and, bring it back into yourself. That's a sort of disowned aspect of you, as it were.
Bullseye.
Yeah.
In fact, just last year, I was kind of waxing lyrical on this at a retreat in South Africa. And I was saying, this kind of shadow integration in the lucid dream state might take up to 6 months of one-on-one therapy in the waking state. There was a therapist in the front row, and he put his hand out and he said, "Charlie, that's incorrect." And I was like, "Oh no, I said, "Sorry, man, sorry, you tell me." And he said it would be more like 6 years of therapy.
Oh, gosh.
I'm sure he was kind of partially joking, but of course, there's always a place for the one-on-one therapy.
Exactly.
But I think awakening to the potential of what the lucid dream state can be is, one of the most direct psychological interventions available today.
Amazing. Wow. And what drew you to the Buddhist route? Because they've been doing this for a long time, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly. We think of lucid dreaming being first proven in the West in the early 70s, and then the Libergian school came up through the 80s, 90s, and now it's super cool because of Inception and Matrix and all this stuff. Everyone's waking up to it. But in fact, Tibetan Buddhism goes back at least 1,000 years of dream practice, or within Tibetan Buddhism, it's called dream yoga.
Right.
Now, it's not as simple as saying dream yoga is Tibetan Buddhist lucid dreaming. Dream yoga is a collection of practices which have lucid dreaming training at their foundation, but also include conscious sleeping practices and what in the West we call astral projection or the outer body experience state.
Right.
They don't use that same terminology, it's called something else, but it is the projection of consciousness out into the wider dream state.
So,
and me getting into that was when I was about 16, I got interested in lucid dreaming and consciousness and UFOs and psychedelics and a bit of Buddhism, but it felt like too much hard work. But then when I was about 18 and I had that near-death experience and I'd seen the potential of the lucid dreaming and meditation, I thought, okay, I'll give this a shot. So then when I was 19, I took refuge and formally became a Buddhist.
Oh, wow. So that's giving you a kind of sort of discipline and a map to follow.
A map to follow and also a lineage.
Yeah.
It's very, very important, I believe, when you're teaching this stuff, to have a lineage basis.
You're
there's
one of the first Western teachers, aren't you, as well?
Oh, who knows? Yeah, I think in this particular aspect, the lineage, I was one of the first. I'm sure there are others, but the lineage is important. It gives us a backup.
Yeah.
It means that if there's a power behind it, it's not just like reading something from a book.
Yeah.
You're getting the power of a long line of people who've been practicing.
So what advice would you give people, just very quickly as we wrap up, if they're interested in lucid dreaming?
If you're interested in lucid dreaming, learn how to do it. There is my book available. There are also many other books available. There's loads of free stuff on the internet too.
Just say the name of your book again.
So my book's called Dreams of Awakening.
Dreams of Awakening, yeah.
Which is available now in bookshops and online, all that kind of stuff. But there are other books available, of course. Buy a book, go on the internet. There are loads of tutorials on YouTube. The cool thing about this is there's no club to join. There's no equipment to buy. There's no religion you need to be part of. You simply need to access the toolbox, go to sleep, and put it into practice. And that is super cool.
Wow. Yeah, so it just seems like it's something that you can just go do on your own. You don't need supervision, do you?
No. This depends.
Right.
I mean, look at me without supervision when I'm 16 to 18, just using it for sex and skateboarding.
Yeah.
So without supervision and guidance, it can be kind of like holding a baby and saying, what does this baby do? A baby doesn't do much. But nurture that baby, and you might be holding the next Gandhi in your arms.
Wow.
The same with lucid dreaming.
Wow.
Nurture that, learn how to make it grow through other people, through teachers, through workshops, through the community, and you could have something very, very powerful in your hands.
So it's a really, really powerful tool to kind of start this awakening, and has been sort of scientifically studied as well. We'll be going into
I try and make sure that everything in my book and in my workshops always comes from three perspectives: Western neuroscience, psychology, and Tibetan Buddhism.
Right.
And I present everyone with those three perspectives and let them make up their mind, which one they choose to explore, which one they choose to believe.
Right. Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, it's something that I haven't tried myself. I think I've had a few experiences that I think now that I've spoken to you probably sound like lucid dreaming. So you went from sex and skateboarding to Tibetan Buddhism. That's a fantastic
That's a tagline
story.
there, isn't it? I should call my next book that. I'll sell loads more copies.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you very much for speaking with us today, Charlie.
Thank you.
I think we're going to bring you back a bit later. So we've got to go for a quick break now, so we'll see you soon. Welcome back. My next guest today is Todd Icke, who is an out-of-body explorer who's been exploring consciousness through expanded states of awareness for more than a decade. He regularly presents talks, seminars and workshops on lucid dreaming and astral projection, and here in London and all around the world. Hello Todd, welcome to the show.
Hi Manjir.
So you've been teaching lucid dreaming and sort of out-of-body stuff and things like that for quite a while. Who comes to your workshops? What sorts of people?
I get a whole range. I've had 16-year-olds all the way up to 90-year-olds. I've had a physicist, teachers, you name it. All walks of life are interested in this subject.
Because a lot of people would say that, looking from the outside, they'd just assume that there were sort of almost new age wackos or things like that. But from the outside. But really, it's sort of all sorts of people, professional people as well.
I think there's a lot of people who are very curious to find out answers for themselves. Maybe they feel science, religion, society at large have let them down, or maybe that these areas don't focus on the points of interest that they have. And I think this is something that we can all do as individuals. We can be our own scientists if we sort of work to validate stuff ourselves and do it through maybe processes that work for science. But we can certainly do it ourselves, and this is what really excites me. This is something we all do naturally. We all have dreams, and this is one reason why I teach the dream stuff, because it's the link we all have. It's our starting point. None of us have to hang up our belief systems. We all have dreams every single night. Of course, you get people who say, I don't have dreams. What they really mean is they just don't remember their dreams. So that's one of the first elements someone like me or Charlie would teach is dream recall, how to start remembering what's already there, and then from there we can take them deeper.
Right, so people come to your workshops with sort of questions about life maybe, or maybe they've experienced something themselves and want to go deeper. So how do you actually take them into that process of actually going into the lucid side of dreaming?
Well, the thing that I find people come to my workshops with the most is fear, a lot of fear. Whether it's regarding dream states, because the shadow stuff that Charlie touched on, this is stuff that we since children haven't had properly sort of educated. We have no education on. Our parents were just as much in the dark as we were. And with the out-of-body stuff, this takes it even deeper, the fear-related stuff. People feel, well, what happens if I leave my body? Do I leave my body empty? Is it an empty vessel and something can jump into it and possess me? Or what happens if I'm having fun on the astral planes and I don't remember how to get back? Will I die while I'm out of my body? These are genuine fears. But in most cases, people are left with what's on the internet, and there are some very good information on the internet, but equally there's a lot of fear-mongering that can be found there too, from people who might have had some very marginal experiences based on a fearful mindset. So for me, the very first thing that we must touch on and deal with is these people's very deeply entrenched fears.
So is it dangerous? I mean, are there any dangers to doing this? Sort of physically to somebody, or even psychologically? Can it trigger sort of psychiatric, underlying psychiatric conditions, for example?
I would say that a majority of the people that have been on my workshops over the years, and I've probably trained well over 1,000 people by now, through weekend workshops, I find that the majority of these people are very balanced. And I usually have a bit of a filtering process, and if I find that people have some sort of underlying issue, if you can sort of detect that before they arrive to the workshop, then it's probably best to steer them away from it, because I do think it can exacerbate that sort of thing. But for a majority of people, I think as long as they have a balanced approach to this is something that they can explore without any danger whatsoever.
Well, some people, of course, just to be on the other side, would argue, well, told you're not a psychiatrist, are you? So, you know, they'd be saying, how can you assess whether that's safe or not? So what would you say to that?
I think that's a very fair question, but I'm also a very intuitive person, and I don't come at this purely from a scientific or psychological angle. I see that there's a deeper nature to reality, and first and foremost comes the energy before this physical body, and therefore things such as the emotions, these are energy states, and this is something that I understand on a deeper level. I don't understand, I don't have an education of, 4 or 6 years in university, but I have, a couple of decades worth of experience in the out-of-body state and teaching this stuff, which, receiving mentoring on other levels of reality. If you sort of say this to just anyone, they might think, okay, they're a little bit sort of crazy. But this is stuff that I find can actually be tested, can actually be shown that is there. And I think there are some very good studies that have been done, especially with the near-death studies that have been done in some of the university hospitals. There is something there to be seen. It's just what are we focusing on? Are we focusing too much on the negative side of this? There's lots to explore. And yes, I don't have a degree in psychology, but I certainly have enough sort of experience to show that there are things that affect us beyond this physical level, which touches into all of these areas of psychology.
Well, we're going to be talking a bit more about the sort of science of consciousness in relation to this a bit later, but first, what made you, did you suddenly wake up and just sort of wake up and go, I'm going to be a lucid dreaming teacher, or how did you get into this?
I actually came about this from a slightly different angle. I started having out-of-body experiences before I started having lucid dreams. I started having experiences from around the age of 6 that lasted up to around the age of 12, and my mother used to actually record the experiences for me at the breakfast table every morning. She'd ask me, what kind of adventure did you have last night? And I knew what I was experiencing was different from my dreams, my nightly dreams. I was revisiting the same places. I was meeting, the same individuals. I was being taught within, the sort of experience itself. I guess same as within the Buddhist practice. They talk about receiving transmissions within dreams. I was receiving teachings within environments where there were other out-of-body explorers. There was other children out of their bodies. I think it's what some would refer to as these mystery schools, where they might think they exist within the physical levels, but these are things that actually exist within the dream worlds and these extra physical environments beyond this physical level reality. So for me, it was at a very early age where I was starting to be shown that reality is much more wide-ranging than just this physical level. There are extra physical environments which are extremely extensive.
Do you think these are the sort of dimensions, maybe that string theory are talking about, that there are different dimensions to the universe where you're meeting these other children?
I'm not really sure on the theory of string theory, but I do have a lot of experience over the years that do show that there is this fuller spectrum of consciousness, and that, to me, whether it's physical reality, dream states, or what we would call, the afterlife environments, these are just different states of the mind. And these are things that can be experienced, either as an individual or shared experiences. And this is what really ultimately excites me about the lucid dreaming topic, is there are highly advanced lucid dream practitioners who are now, practicing together in their own households with the aim of having a shared lucid dream. And this is something that I've experienced on numerous occasions, not just with friends like Charlie, but with my own son. And in fact, with my son, I had my very first shared lucid dream.
Wow. So you really do experience that things that you're seeing in lucid dreaming actually coming into your sort of so-called waking life as well?
I think the crossover is very evident.
Yeah.
Whatever you're going to experience in the lucid dream state, can be a mirror for physical reality and vice versa. And I think this is why, things again that Charlie was touching on, the psychological aspects, the belief systems. This is very powerful stuff to be able to literally tap into the subconscious, through this window that, just it's, for example, I'll give you, there's a study that was recently done by a psychologist, Bennett Braun, and he was working with a 10-year-old boy who was suffering from multiple personality disorder.
Right.
And one of the personalities had an allergic reaction to orange juice,
Right.
but one of the other personalities didn't. Whenever he had orange juice, when that personality was evident,
Right.
he did not break out in hives like he normally would with orange juice. So to me, this shows that there is evidence that this is psychological in sort of belief system based, which is something that can be touched upon within the lucid dreams, and I feel healed.
Yeah, and would you agree with that, Charlie, that there's some benefits, the benefits actually come into the waking life as well, that, you know, what do interactions?
Yeah, that's the point. I mean, we're asleep for a third of our lives, right? So that's great if we can do sleep and dream practice. But we're awake for 2/3. So unless this sleep and dream stuff directly affects the 2/3 of our life that we're awake, maybe it's not such a big deal. But of course it does, and it is. Because lucid dreaming prepares us for lucid living. That's the point. Every lucid dream we have is to wake up to our psychological projections so that we may do the same in this state.
Yeah, amazing. Right, so it's really giving an insight into a different level of reality for any state that you're in, any state of consciousness, really, isn't
Absolutely.
it? And you wouldn't be teaching it if you hadn't seen benefits in yourself, or
The benefits I've seen. I mean, people used to say to me, you know, you're ungrounded. When I was younger, I'd always be sort of in daydream states.
Yeah.
Where nowadays, I find that the more I wake up within my dreams, the more I wake up in these expanded states of awareness.
Really sorry, I've got to just, but we've got to go to a break. So please join us again, and we'll have our next guest, who is David Ferrell. Thank you. Welcome back. My next guest is David Ferrell, who recently organised the Lucid Dreaming Conference, Gateways of the Mind, in London, which featured some of the top scientific researchers in lucid dreaming. Hi David, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Can you tell me a bit about how this conference came about? How did it get started?
Yeah, it's actually it's a bit of a personal story, which started with me and my wife reading a book by a guy called William Borman, who's quite well known for his experiences in out-of-body states. And that was a couple of years ago, in fact about 3 years ago, when we were living in India. And that kind of book inspired us both to start exploring the ideas of consciousness much, much more. And interestingly enough, that actually led us to one of Charlie's workshops at the Cargill Centre about 2.5 years ago, Charlie?
Yeah.
And we attended the workshop which he was running on lucid dreaming, and that kind of inspired us. We're like, wow, this is really interesting. This is something we want to explore a lot more. Myself and my wife were coming from an events background, but in the business-to-business world. And we thought that there was a great possibility to bring like-minded people together to discuss consciousness in a much bigger kind of capacity, and that's what inspired us to create Gateways of the Mind.
Right. And was this the first conference that you've just done in the last few weeks, haven't you?
No, actually this was the third Gateways that we've done. Second one we've done in London, and we did one in Dublin earlier this year as well.
Right, okay. And how many people are coming to these events, and what's the sort of interest?
Well, it's growing. It's definitely growing year on year. The first year we had about 150 people in London, and then this year we had about 250 people.
Right.
So it's definitely growing. The concepts of lucid dreaming through the kind of work that Charlie's doing and out-of-body stuff, you know, through the stuff that Todd's doing, it's really getting out there. And obviously the advent of the people using the internet and social media has really helped, because there's so many more communities online now. So it's really, the word is definitely out, and because I think lucid dreaming is so accessible, because everybody sleeps, everybody dreams, as organisers for Gateways, we saw that as a great entry point to engage kind of, you know, everyday people in a much more kind of broad spiritual context, and to get them asking much bigger questions.
Right, excellent. And so did you have that sort of arena at the conference as well, where people could sort of interact and sort of ask questions and have discussions at all?
Yeah, definitely. In fact, one of the kind of cornerstones of what we do with our Gateways of the Mind event is actually to make sure the event is very interactive. So not only do we have a lot of great teachers on the program talking about all different types of consciousness exploration, but we actually get each of the teachers to engage the entire audience in practical exercises. So this ranges from sort of deep meditation to energy exercises to sort of lucid dreaming inducing techniques. And we also make sure that all of the teachers are very accessible across the course of the weekend. So it's a very interactive event. We always encourage everybody who's attending to really interact with each other, talk to each other, share their experiences, and it creates a really nice atmosphere, one of sharing, and people feel very comfortable at our events, and that's great. That's what we want to see.
Brilliant. I bet lots of sort of long-term friendships are made as well, you know, these sorts of conferences. So you had quite a few scientists come to this conference as well. What's the sort of main research that's been done in this area?
Well, I mean, with our event, what we try to do is present different kind of paths to the ideas of consciousness. So in the past, we have had people who are coming from a kind of scientific Western approach. We've had people with a Tibetan Buddhist background. We've had this year we had somebody who's really a Taoist dream yoga teacher, and also this year we introduced more kind of different concepts of shamanism. So really the idea is just to show that there are different kind of ways of measuring lucid dreaming, out-of-body experiences, consciousness exploration, from different cultural backgrounds, from different wisdom traditions. And in doing that, what we really want to do is show people that there is the possibility to engage in these ideas, but from different perspectives, and allow people to find one that resonates with them the most. And from there, they can kind of use that as a jump-off point and really get into whichever one they feel most comfortable with.
Yeah. Are there people who, in sort of labs around the world, are actually studying this, like sort of maybe waking people up in their sleep and testing them? What sort of things are going on out there?
Well, actually, interestingly, this year we were fortunate enough to have a very well-known guy called Keith Hearn, who Charlie knows a little bit more about, I think, than I do. But he was really the guy that discovered lucid dreaming in Western science, and was the first person to...
He was the first person to scientifically verify the existence of lucid dreaming.
Right.
In a sleep lab at Hull University in 1973, I believe, or kind of early 70s. But even now, you know, there's a lot of research being done at Hildenberg University. This year, one of the researchers was actually at Gateways of the Mind conference, and they've been researching how neural pathways are laid in the mind as we lucid dream, specifically around sports practice. So they're doing studies, 850 athletes trained in the art of lucid dreaming. Of course, not all of them could do it, but a few hundred of them did learn to have lucid dreams, and they would then practice their sport in the lucid dream. What they found was this far outstripped waking state visualization, because it laid neural pathways in the dream state. So if you go into the lucid dream and do press-ups, you can increase muscle mass in the waking state, not just psychological, physical muscle mass.
Right.
This is huge.
Gosh, so actually changing muscle mass. Any other researchers that came to your conference, or that particularly struck you?
Well, Graham Nichols is quite well known. He's kind of another out-of-body explorer, but he works with a lot of people like Rupert Sheldrake.
Yes.
And he always tries to validate all of his experiences as much as he can.
So Rupert Sheldrake's actually studying the sort of experiences of Graham Nichols. Is that what's going on?
No, perhaps not so much that Rupert studied Graham's research, not as far as I know, but Graham is kind of, he likes to make sure that everything can be validated in the scientific sense, because he's very cautious about ideas about out-of-body exploration being laid open for people to ridicule. So that's good. It kind of gives a nice balance to our event, because a lot of the teachers are coming from wisdom traditions or perhaps more spiritual backgrounds, but we always try to keep a certain sort of sense of scientific research or more grounded approaches, just to show that this isn't something that's a little bit too far out there, that, you know, that people think.
So there are universities, there are PhD scientists who are out there who are actually studying lucid dreaming, sort of in the labs, waking people up, doing the EEGs, doing the MRIs.
Dozens.
They're doing all of those things, and they're various places around the world. So the studies are being done. Because I know I come from the medical profession, and I know a lot of doctors would just be, you know, hearing that now going, well, isn't this all hallucination? This is just, what's your response to that?
It was very interesting. There was a debate a few days before our event this year, which kind of was a cynics and kind of believers debate. And on one side you had people like Graham Nichols, Anthony Peake, who's quite well known as well as an author. And on the other side you had kind of philosophers and people from a scientific background. So it was an interesting debate, and it was very, very heady. So there was a lot of kind of academic viewpoints, and it kind of took the audience on a bit of a journey into the philosophical, scientific side of consciousness exploration, which is perhaps a little bit a bit more heady than we do at our Gateways event. We try to keep it balanced and show something across the board.
Yeah. So they were looking at the neurology maybe, and sort of neural pathways that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's a lady called Melanie Shadlick, right, Charlie? Who's doing a lot of research on the science sports side, also developing the ideas that Charlie was talking about there. And there's a guy in, I think, Germany or Austria called Daniel Erlach, who's been studying with sports people to improve their techniques in different sports. So it's just interesting to see how this kind of research is going in different directions from a scientific side, but also from a more traditional spiritual side.
So what about you, Todd? What would you say to the skeptics?
Try it out. Give it a go. There's nothing like a direct experience, and you know, to be a mind changer.
It's one of those topics, isn't it, that we can sit and talk about it, but at the end of the day, you sort of really, really have to experience it yourself.
Absolutely. You either believe something or you know it. So.
Sure, sorry. Have you had any hassle from skeptics over the years? Have people come up to you at all?
I think we all probably have at one point. I mean, I guess it's different routes to dealing with it. I throw them straight with the science. I give them the science first, and then if they're interested, the Buddhism and the psychology. You know, at Max Planck Institute, and this was research from just 3 years ago, headed by a Harvard sleep scientist, they recorded the first lucid dream in an fMRSI scanner. So this is way beyond EEG, this is functional magnetic resonance imaging scanner. They got somebody asleep. Back part of the brain is active, front part of the brain deactivated, as you would expect in normal dreaming sleep. At the point that the person had a lucid dream, the right dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, boom, lights up. They thought the experiment was over. They said, oh no, the person's woken up. They realized, no, the person's still asleep, and yet the part of the brain where self-reflection arises has switched on. They realized they recorded the first ever lucid dream in an fMRSI scanner. This stuff is for real. Any skeptics out there you may know, send them to the research, Max Planck Institute, Harvard study, it's all there.
Brilliant, brilliant. And you've got another conference coming up as well, maybe they should attend that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're interested in the ideas of consciousness exploration, then yeah, our Gateways to the Mind event is probably the only event that's really dedicated to it, looking at it from a lucid dreaming, out-of-body and shamanic sense. And yeah, we have Charlie as our host every year. He's a wealth of knowledge. He knows his science, which is great because he brings it into the event. Plus, he has his Tibetan Buddhist background, and yeah, it's every year. We just finished last week. This year's event. We're now planning for next year's. Probably next year we're going to focus a bit more on the deaf world. So we're going to bring in Tibetan Bardo concepts. We're going to look at near-death experiences. Because we think this is also a very important part of consciousness exploration. So we're always evolving the idea of what we're doing with Gateways.
Okay, brilliant, brilliant. Well, so you've mentioned a few things there that I think we're going to have to come back to that because we're headed to another break. So so join us again when we come back from the break. Thank you. Welcome back. We're talking about lucid dreaming today, and David, before we went for a break, you actually started to talk about something called Bardos. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Well, in the Tibetan Buddhist system of belief, they have a state called the Bardo State, which actually means intermediary state. So it can also refer to this life as well. The experience that we're having as human beings right now in this room and in our normal lives is also considered a Bardo, but normally it refers to what happens to us after we die. It's the state that we enter into where we face our karma, we face our demons, and that, in a Tibetan sense, normally is when we start to look at where we're going to be reborn in our next life. So it also brings in the ideas of reincarnation and the karma that we've accrued from this lifetime and past lifetimes.
So it's the idea that the sort of soul goes through different sort of stages and can explore these, but probably after death. But can you actually do that during life as well?
It's a good question. I mean, technically, Buddhists don't really believe in the concept of the soul. They believe in the concept of consciousness or of the mind. So when we cross over into the Bardo state after we've died, the way they see it, everything is a projection of the mind, and so normally that often means meeting a lot of your own demons, things that you haven't come to terms with in your life, in this state. And normally in their sort of ideology, that will propel you into your next life based on the karma that you've accrued both positively and negatively. Right,
so really we're talking about having experiences after somebody has died, and after brain death as well, and it does link to lucid dreaming, doesn't it? Because it could be all this exploration of consciousness. So what do you think? I mean, the three of you, what do you think about consciousness existing after death? I mean,
well, I'd like to bring that back to the Bardo if I could. David gave a wonderful explanation of the Bardo there, which was great, and yet we didn't quite get to how it links to the dream state.
Yeah.
Within Tibetan Buddhism, the Bardo state, the after-death Bardo state, is seen as a dreamlike hallucinatory projection that our mind stream enters into once it is dislocated from the physical body at the point of death. Dreamlike hallucinatory projection. So it's believed that every time we train ourselves to recognize the dream through lucid dreaming in this life, we are training ourselves to recognize the after-death Bardo state. So that rather than going, aha, I'm in a dream, we go, aha, I'm dead. Now, why the hell do you want to say, aha, I'm dead? It sounds nightmarish, right? But apparently, if you could engage that same fully lucid recognition of the Bardo state as you do of the dream state, that holds within it the highest spiritual potential. It's spoken of the last chance saloon for full spiritual awakening as at the point of death. If you can become lucid within the Bardo, you can reach full spiritual realization at the point of death. So every time you train for a lucid dream, you're training for that big sleep at the end of life. You're training to become lucid in the Bardo and to guide your consciousness with full lucidity through to your next rebirth or through to whatever dimension of reality you choose to go to. Now, easier said than done. It takes more than a couple of lucid dreams to do that. You have got to have mastered the practice in the waking state to hold any chance of recognizing the Bardo. But we've got to start somewhere. So let's start with lucid dreaming.
So it's kind of like this ancient tradition that the Egyptians had as well, didn't they, of preparing, like they had the Book of the Dead as well as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Well, you're sort of preparing your consciousness for when you actually leave. So what do you think that means, Todd, for consciousness existing beyond the brain then?
Well, as David mentioned earlier with William Buhlman, one of the top individuals within this field, he mentions in his book, we have this tool similar to the internet. When we go on holiday, we use the internet to find out, what the hotel is going to be like, what the pool's like, the beach, the local restaurants. Well, we have a similar tool with lucid dreaming and the out-of-body state of consciousness. We can go and enter these different states of the mind and explore the potential of what we would call the afterlife. And I think that's really fascinating. This is why I like to teach people how to have these direct experiences so they can actually find out for themselves about these states. You can go out of body and meet people who are in this Bardo state, this in-between state, and see that they've literally within their own projection and self-imprisoned within their own projection without even realizing it. And then to sort of move beyond that state of consciousness, move into what religions would call the afterlife state. Visiting these consensus realities that exist beyond the Bardo, beyond these personal projections, these shared environments. And at this point, to be able to sort of put your finger on potentially where you might exist after the transition of death from this physical world.
So it really does seem that there's the personal projection world, which a lot of people are exploring in lucid dreaming, and then there's beyond that as well, which are consensus reality sort of dimensions. Is that
absolutely?
Something?
But saying that, even here on this level of reality, we have a lot of personal projection.
Yeah.
So I think if you just look at everything as being a state of mind, a state, just exploring consciousness through these different bands, bubbles within bubbles.
Yeah.
But we can be out of body and still have personal projections that we're experiencing within a shared reality space. And the same can go, here on this level of reality.
Gosh. No, it just seems that there's so much more to our spectrum of consciousness that most of us are aware of at all. So you guys are really doing an amazing job to actually bring that to awareness for so many people. And it seems that, from what you've been saying, that these are ancient traditions as well that we've forgotten about, and the Tibetans definitely knew about it.
Yeah, and even way before the Tibetans. People think that the Tibetans were one of the first to create a kind of a science around the practices of dream yoga, which again, conscious sleeping, lucid dreaming, out-of-body exploration. But in fact, what they were building on was a shamanic tradition of Bun, which was the shamanic tradition of Tibet that existed before Buddhism arrived, that's got at least another 2,000 years of dream work behind it. So actually this links us straight back into the shamanic indigenous cultures, which have been working with dreaming since man and women have been going to sleep. This stuff was not invented in 1973 when the great Keith Earn proved it. It was not invented with the Tibetan Buddhisms. It was possibly invented when consciousness first sprung from the monkey who ate the mushroom or whatever you want to think about. Who knows?
Amazing.
And it was never even forgotten about.
Yeah, it's been there.
This is just being brought forward more and more by explorers who are on that cutting edge, who are putting themselves out there to have these direct experiences, to go beyond believing stuff, to actually experience things firsthand and know. It makes a huge difference.
Yes, yeah, brilliant. It's a renaissance of consciousness, really.
Yeah.
So very quickly, people who want to know more, what would you say to them?
Well, I would say come to our Gateways of the Mind event, either in Dublin this coming May in 2014, or to come to our London event, which is really our big flagship event, which is evolving every year and sort of bringing different ideas of consciousness. That's going to be the 8th and 9th of November. Check out our website, archetypeevents.com.
archetypeevents.com.
Yeah.
Right, okay. And there's a meetup group as well.
Yeah, we have a meetup group called the Lucid Experience.
Right, okay, so you can find that on meetup.com.
Yeah. Or our Facebook page.
Facebook page, right, brilliant. And what about you, Todd?
I would say to come out and have a direct experience, so come out and play with us. We teach people how to be very grounded on this level of reality in order to be very grounded when they start having these experiences, which, as far as I'm concerned, we have every single night. From my perspective, a lucid dream is a byproduct of an out-of-body experience. Each and every night our energy bodies will slightly go out of phase with the physical, and this is when we go into dreamland as well.
Yeah.
So to teach people these different states, how to trigger these experiences from a very safe, sort of launch pad. So yes, I would say have a direct experience, learn about sort of getting in touch with this fear-related stuff, the shadow element that Charlie's talked about earlier, so we can explore, because if we hold on to too much fear, we're not going to explore very far.
Yeah.
Fear will only take us so far.
And you just recommend people get hold of do it themselves at home?
There's a lot of books on the subject,
Yeah.
a lot of really good books. David mentioned William Bowman, who's been doing this for more than 30 years. There's of course Robert Monroe, who's the main pioneer within this area. So I highly recommend his work for inspiration, and then perhaps William Bowman's book for some techniques if you want to take it further. I run weekend workshops. I run 9-day retreats.
Where can they find out about you?
Journeyoftruth.co.uk.
Right, okay. Right, thank you very much. And Charlie?
I should probably take this opportunity to plug the book, shouldn't I? I've just released a book on Hay House called Dreams of Awakening, which is a pretty comprehensive guide to lucid dreaming, and that will teach you how to do it. Or you can go to my website, charliemorley.com, and there's loads of workshops next year. I'm doing a world tour next year too, so I'll be all over the place.
World tour, wow. So he'll be in your neck of the woods, whatever. So, absolutely fantastic. Okay, thank you so much for coming, guys. Thank you. It's been absolutely fascinating. So I've learned a lot today, and I hope you have too. Next time on Hidden Science, we'll be discussing what doctors don't tell you. So I hope you can join us then. Goodbye.